Welcome to episode 97, everyone. We are diving into the rich, long history of divination, and we have a psychic medium diving in with us. We finished recording the first half of our episode and realized, it's a doozy. So we divvied up the divination. In part one, we are talking divination in ancient civilizations, from China to Egypt and some really bananas stuff in ancient Rome. And then in episode 98, we're going to serve up part two, in which we will be traveling from the Elizabethan Age through to today. So let's get started. The future looks bright. Hello there, and welcome, and bienvenidos and bienvenue to a multilingual episode of High Tales of History. Just kidding.
Like, that wasn't planned. I was like, oh shit.
We are a history podcast where two sisters get high and take a hazy journey through history. I'm the older sister, Laurel.
I guess that makes me the younger sister, Katie.
It does make you the younger sister, Katie. And we have a friend joining with us tonight. We have our friend, psychic medium and intuitive tarot reader, Saundra. Saundra, welcome to the Smoke Circle.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm so excited. Folks, in today's episode, we are going to go through the incredibly long history of divination. And who better to do that with than your friendly neighborhood psychic medium friend? I knew Saundra in high school. This is great. So Saundra and I, we go back 5 years.
Just
5 years. It's fine. So we go way back 5 years. But we go back to high school. We were in some same classes together. Actually, Spanish class. So bienvenidos for sure to you as well as history.
I didn't know. Okay, I didn't know if you remember that. Yes.
And since connecting, I have found out that you, Saundra, are a tarot reader, and you have a great, thriving community on TikTok doing readings and connecting with people in this way. And really,
yeah, surprise. Went from honors history straight to tarot. You know,
it was a really interesting thing to like relearn about, or like learn about what you're doing now, I should say, as we reconnect. But it worked great, because at the time that we were chatting about this, I was like, I have always wanted to do an episode where we're talking about divination practices, or maybe something more specific, but just something in that realm, because humanity has an incredibly long history of divination. And due to divination being so old and touching virtually every civilization and culture in some way, there's a lot that we're going to be talking about here. So we won't be covering every single practice that's ever existed, but we want to give you a good idea of like some of the major ones, as well as some famous divinators, famous fortune-telling people throughout history. So this is what we're going to do, cool kids. We're going to start amongst the ancient civilizations, working from west to east across the globe. And then we're going to move forward in time to the Elizabethan Age. We're going to chill with Queen Elizabeth I a little bit. And then we're going to catapult or trebuchet, whatever you want to do there, into the 19th century, when just those banana sandwich Victorians were just living, laughing, loving every minute of their spiritualism. Lots of divination, lots of channeling, lots going on there. And then finally,
mummy juice.
Drinking mummy juice, cocaine, but calling it medicine, faith healing, all kinds of things were going on. But then also there's a lot of like progress in science and industry there too. So Victorian era is going to be a lot of fun. And then finally, we're going to be wrapping things up in contemporary history and looking at where divination is today, how it's used. And then also with this topic, because it is divination and lots of sources everywhere about this sort of thing, we're going to try and get as close to primary source or like written historical evidence as possible for these topics, because there's a lot of interpretation by all kinds of people over time, but like practitioners, because of how they interpret what they're doing and what they've learned, and then that kind of gets passed on and written about. So some of that's not always aligned with historical records. We're going to try and stick as close to that as possible. But first, enough chit chat, Laurel. But first, what are we doing with relaxation tools tonight? What are we bringing to the Smoke Circle? How are we doing, kids? Are we doing all right? I'm going to start with Saundra. Saundra, do you have anything that you're chilling out with tonight? Could be water,
I
coffee,
have
tea.
my electrolyte water and I popped an anxiety pill.
Slancheva. There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's it. That's exactly it. How about you, Katie?
Strawberry lemonade.
I thought you were gonna say lemonade.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
So there you go, mate. Summer Fridays. It's gonna get the job done, I'm gonna tell you, and you're gonna know real fast when it hits.
Nice. Excellent. Well, I also have lemonade. Mine's strawberry. Oh wait, yours is strawberry too, isn't it?
Yeah, so is mine.
Sorry. I just
Wait,
sorry, I had already
are you
forgotten what you
partaking in my edibles?
No, but I've got
You have the
not
drink.
the same one. I've got the no, it's an edible, but it's just a
Okay.
different brand. Drink wise though, I have some coffee and I have some water. So Sandra, before we get started, we'll be talking to you some more at the end and going through a tarot reading as well too. But Sandra, where did your divination journey begin?
Well, COVID, ironically, and maybe not ironically, I have always been interested in the supernatural. And so I wanted to feel like a connection to something tangible related to the supernatural because I'm a very visual person and I like a hands-on experience. And so I decided to purchase my own tarot deck and had no idea what I was doing. Was just so interested and curious and just did like a little dabbling of research and kind of like tuning in and what I was feeling, I guess, with it. And it kind of just took off from there. And yeah, the rest is history, I guess, with that.
Yeah. Well, that's
Mhm.
amazing considering that you've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years
Mhm.
now roughly.
Yeah, 5 years.
And like,
Hmm.
yeah, I was thinking it's been a shorter time than that is when I was starting this question to you. And I was like, actually, no, it's about 5 years now. Uh, just like how easily it seems to come to you. And like you're so smooth, like watching you do it. And it just seems like
Thanks.
you've like been reading for ever. But I suppose 5 years still is, yeah, a long time now that I'm saying this out loud.
I mean, when I received this tarot deck, and it's actually this one right here, my white tarot deck, and I call it my tried and true because it's my first one. I hyper focused and obsessed a little bit, and I like could not get enough. I was like a bottomless pit just with when it came to tarot and trying to learn it all and connect with it. And when I started reading just for myself, because I didn't really tell anyone that I was doing this, I would write down everything that would come out and I would just interpret it and things like that. And then all of a sudden it just started to become a little bit more natural. And I put myself out there with like my mom and
Mhm.
my sisters. And I was like, can I read for you? And just don't watch me because I'm really embarrassed. I'm really like nervous about it. And they let me. They were so kind in that way. And then all of a sudden they were like, hey, wait, that actually is really real. That really resonates. And I was like, okay, I love that you feel comfortable telling me that. And then it just kind of like popped off. But while I've been reading for 5 years, I didn't go public with it until about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of followers over on TikTok. So like obviously it's what you're doing is like resonating with other people too.
Yeah, I'm
So
very lucky that I found a little pocket of space to share it. And I have some people who have been following me since day one, and then I get, new people, and it's been really fun to watch, also cringy to watch me evolve over the space, but also really fun to just, constantly be learning about it and being able to share it with random people and then people, that are really close to me. So.
when it comes to divination, it is universal. As I mentioned, virtually every culture has had some form of divination that was practiced by the people within it. Yes, there are some ancient societies here and there where divination was forbidden for like religious or political reasons, but it's still it still lingered. There was still always something going on. So at any point in history, if it ever gets banned or tries to get squashed at any point, it might simmer down a little bit, but it's always been prevalent in humanity. Just like if you're smoking some weed and it's in a place that's not legal, you're like, there might be rules against this, but here I am with my J. It's okay. Your secret's safe with us. But it's that same sort of thing. Like it's still there. You can't squash it out. The earliest written evidence for divination goes back to the early 2nd millennium BCE in Mesopotamia. Yeah, we're going back to our 6th grade history and geography. I remember learning about Mesopotamia in the 6th grade for sure. And then there are, records of it all over the world too. Divination is a way to gain knowledge that wouldn't otherwise be easily obtained. It's a means to help when life is uncertain. You'll see divination spring up a lot of times throughout history during very uncertain times or when there's upheaval in the world. It can warn somebody. It can reassure them. It can answer some of life's big questions like, do I take my country to war? Or does he love me? Or
I do a lot of those.
I do, yeah. That is a question for everyone throughout history. Do they like me back? Do they love me?
It's a universal question.
It's a universal question for sure. For sure. And then something as simple as like, who the fuck stole my sheep? God damn it, Earl. stealing sheep. I don't know why the name's got to be Earl, but get some answers that way. It shines a light on the future. It can shine a light on the past. And there is, technically speaking, there is a difference between divination and prophecy, although the two definitely intertwine a lot and some of them are used hand in hand even within the same practice. Divination refers to a variety of methods in which a person can communicate with the supernatural. It's going to be a very vague term here, the supernatural, in order to obtain special knowledge. It's often in a type of code in some way, and again, that's very open to interpretation. Their code, pictures, words, symbols, and then that has a set of guidelines in order to like read a message, or it relies on the diviner's own intuition. Whereas like prophecy is considered to be direct, or like channeling prophecy, anything like that is considered to be direct and revealed in plain language through a person. Like, God spoke to me, God said this, and very direct. I noticed a lot of times prophecy is often, not always, connected to a lens of religion and spirituality. Like again, God spoke to me, God said this, Apollo said this, Zeus says this. There's some sort of like special person tag that gets put on like a prophet or a seer or an oracle versus like in divination, where like anyone can technically do it and develop the skill of reading. Some might be more inclined than others and gravitate towards it more, but that it's like a muscle, like in divination, you can learn how to do it. Introduction's done. Okay, definitions given. Check and check. Let us travel to the Far East, and we're going to land, in ancient China. First stop. China's really fun. It is a long time ancient civilization. Lots of really cool things invented in China, lots of firsts that are coming out of China. Had some fun methods of divination. We're going to start with I Ching, which is really old, everybody. It's so old, I Ching is. The book is at least 3,000 years old, and it was assembled between the 10th and 4th centuries BCE. So over this long period of time, way back when. And it makes it pretty much one of the world's oldest books. Blends divination and philosophy, and is also known as the Book of Changes. It's also based on the concepts of yin and yang and balance, light and dark, and encourages self-reflection, which, one could say that divination encourages self-reflection across the board in all forms of it. Right? I'm right. You have to, you have to sit in it. You have to think. So like, yes. But the philosophy part of it is like added to the divination practice. Okay. So there's two methods of using I Ching, and I found them to be so complicated. The oldest version uses 50 yarrow stalks, And my brain just hates math. So even though the math is simple, I've read over the instructions for this and I was like, there's so many numbers, so much going on. So I would be really interested if anyone has used I Ching before, like to give you it to like write to us and give us your experience with it. Cause I think it was fascinating, but I was like, wow, this is really in depth. The second one is coins. It's much quicker to do, but also very mathy as well. If you're using the Yarrow method, Yarrow, I guess Yarrow method, it uses hexagrams. A hexagram is the fortune and the judgment on each line of the hexagram. I know. Here we go.
Hold on, my visual brain is trying to process this one.
I have a picture up for those who can see it, but yeah, I had a real tough time with it. But you get a hexagram, and each line within the hexagram has a different fortune or judgment on it, and then that like lists down. So I see Katie being like, "What the fuck?" So yeah, I'll have to put a picture up so you guys can
I was
see
sitting
what's
here
happening.
like I went to the little notes section. I was trying to draw it on my phone, and I was like, hmm. And then it occurred to me, occurred to my high ass, and I was like, you could just Google hexagram, and I'm like, oh, that's better. Do that.
You just Googled it.
Yeah,
It's
so
not helpful.
it's not.
Just so you
Oh,
know.
Yeah, same thing happened to me when I was reading this, and they were like, "Yep, it makes a hexagram." And I was like, "Great, great, great!" And then I was like, "And that is," and so I had to go look up a picture of it, and I was like, "Great!" And then what happens in that? And they're like, "There's a line, and for each line of the hexagram, you get a fortune." I'm like, "But how many?" There's something with the way you're passing the yarrows over in your hand, like you're holding them between certain fingers. And then there's like certain things that will add to like 1 + 4 of that will equal a number. And then is the book will have your hexagram numbers in there. And then you're like, okay, each line of this hexagram, I find my fortune from it. If I'm understanding that correctly, I was sitting with it for a long time and I was like, wow.
I'd be very impressed to watch that work. That
Mm-hmm.
feels like a commitment to learn.
It
I mean, it
does.
all
Yeah.
is, but that feels like you have to have a lot of brain space. That's
Yes.
wow.
That's what I got out of it. I was like, I think this would be fascinating to watch somebody do it. I bet
Yes.
somebody could do it really quickly, but especially like with the way they're like transferring these yarrow stocks over. I'm like, is there a certain speed to it? Is someone's like really good? Yeah, my brain felt full trying to like figure out the math of each line. So there's our first one. That's an
Wow.
old one. It's been around for a long time. But you know what else has been around for a long time and was really popular in ancient China and the Shang Dynasty?
Yes.
Scapulomancy. Yeah. So the Shang Dynasty is generally considered to be 1600. Picture the great history timeline in your brain. 1600 to 1046 BCE. So as we're moving
okay.
forward in
Then there were
time.
no egg rolls. I just Googled,
Mm.
and they weren't invented until the early 1930s.
Yeah.
It's
in
not egg
like
rolls.
in like America, probably.
Yeah, like in
Yeah.
New York, I was like, oh, it's like Saganaki. It was just until it got to Chicago that we're like, light it on fire.
So that's a while ago. It's a long running dynasty, and it was like way back in the BCEs there. And a popular form of divination was something called scapulomancy. And you're going to find this in other cultures tonight as well too. So it wasn't exclusive to China, but scapulomancy was real big. If you're familiar with anatomy, scapulomancy sounds a whole lot like scapula, aka shoulder blade. And you're not wrong. In scapulomancy, which is specific to using an ox's shoulder blade, diviners would etch questions onto the bone. So they would characters on the bone, and then the bone would get heated really high heat, and any resulting cracks would then be interpreted, and then the answers themselves would also be written on the bone next to the question, which I think is great. So you kind of get like your question. So if you were to ever like look back and reference any of them, you know what your question and your answer was in that moment. I like them both together. Now it's amazing considering that like bones. I don't know why I think Jurassic Park with this. This doesn't make any sense because bones exist
I
in
heard
all other
dinosaurs. I'm
periods of time.
ready.
But bones have like serious lasting power when it comes to like archaeology, basically. And it's really amazing that these oracle bones, quote unquote, they weren't found for millennia, considering, again, that they'd have all these bones with the questions and answers written on them. They were thought to basically be a myth, like a fictitious thing that would happen back in ancient China of like, oh yeah, the oracle bones, and diviners would get answers from these oracle bones, but we've never found evidence for it until, again, way back in the BCE there. We're going to fast forward to the 20th century. Well, turn of the 20th century. It's 1899. China's in a bit of a precarious position. There's domestic chaos, there's problems in the palace, and there's a whole lot of foreign powers, mostly Western, but Japan's in there too, and I think Russia, but a lot of outside powers that are like rubbing their hands together like little flies going, the China, we're going to have jump in there and invade. So China's got a lot of internal and external pressures going on.
You couldn't say like something cuter like a mouse? Like, why did it have to be a fly? Mice rubbed their
Because
little paws
China's just
together.
trying to like live their life. This is very imperialistic is what it feels like to me.
That's true.
Well,
they're also vomiting on their hands, so like
this is
True.
also true.
It's true.
Hey.
All I could think about when you were talking about the scapulomancy, when you were saying that they would write the question down and an answer would also then be written down. How do we know that this wasn't the early version of Jeopardy, where they were actually writing down the answer and asking spirit to give a question? That's
These
all my
oracle
brain
bones
could
are
think
still,
about.
yeah. They had this like rousing game show. It was basically
That's right.
Jeopardy. And
That's right.
yeah,
We
the
don't
oracle
know.
bones are still a myth. You're right. They're like,
That's all I could think about.
how do you know though? Like, it's a good point. I'm just gonna
Right.
back it up because like I agree at this point. I'm like, you know what? You don't know. Maybe we all sat in circles around the fire and we're like, I'm fucking bored, you guys. We should do a game show. And they're like, yeah, fantastic.
yeah.
And then they
Questions
just
and
raid the
answers, guys.
carcass.
And the
We're gonna need a
answer
lot of
is written
bones.
blue, and they're like the color of the sky.
Yeah, and while all that is going on, an imperial bureaucrat named Wang Yirong gets a bad case of the malaria. Yuck. Poor guy. And he sends his servant out on his behalf to a doctor who was like, yeah, I can cure you with some dragon bones. Don't worry about it. So,
I thought you were gonna say whale penis, so dragon bones are better.
dragon bones. He's like, I got some dragon bones out back for you. I can help you out. So Wayne gets these bones from this doctor, and they have etching on them. Get this, our boy Wang, he happens to be a scholar of ancient scripts and antiquities. So not only does he notice that the bones have etchings on them that are not natural, he's like, oh, I am recognizing this as early Chinese, but it's so early, I can't even read it. So we don't even have this language recorded yet, or like these characters recorded, which is amazing. Unfortunately, that same year, the Boxer Rebellion happened. Wang took his life during it because of the chaos and seeing a lot of his friends dying. So his friend is like, oh, I'm going to pick up Wang's work and I'm going to carry the torch of this, trying to find more of these etched bones because this is really amazing. This could be a huge historical find. And he manages to build up a sort of sizable collection. But it's not until about 30 years later when Chinese scholars finally pinpointed where these bones were all coming from. And they were all coming from the ancient royal capital from the Shang dynasty. So basically, the royal court was just scapula mancying all the time with lots of questions to the spirit world. And it was like, this is what's great about it. It wasn't just like, maybe should I take my country to war? Or what should I do about this economic situation? Or like, what should my next plans be? Like these sort of questions, which were a part of it. But there was also just like chit chat between the royal court and the spirit world, which I love that. It was like, here's what the king did today. This is what he did. This is what's going on with the king. This is what's going on with the queen. Here's what's happening in the court. It's like gossip. It's hot. It's like hot goss to the spirit world. And I was like, I think that's kind of fun. Like who gets to be on the other side of that is like, sipping their coffee being like, what she said what? What? Oh, you're not going to believe it. Like there's some drama in the court, or
like
if the spirits on the other side are like, oh, we don't fucking care. We've got other things to do, but like,
dude, it makes me think of the end of Mulan when they're all like sitting around talking and stuff and
Yeah.
Mushu's causing havoc, but like when they're all sitting chit-chatting. Dude, they love the chit chat. They love the gossip. What else have they got to do? They're just sitting around, hanging out,
Yeah,
waiting for something fun to happen.
the gossip from the court, which I bet could be, 50-50. I'm sure you're going to get the things that are like, we've had X amount of reports from peasants about this, and then they took care of this thing. You're like, oh, come on, where's the good stuff? And then like maybe the next day, like some shit went down in the court, and they're like, oh, finally, tell me all about it, Um, but that's scapulomancy in the Shang Dynasty, which had like a really interesting story around it. Now, scapulomancy can also be done with turtle shells, and often frequently was. It has a different name. It's called plastromancy. Fun. Turtle shells, oxen rib bones, or scapula bones. So I'm going to make one last stop in ancient Chinese divination before I pass the proverbial torch on to Katie, and I'm going to send you off to India. Virtually every culture has a practice around astrology. And there are a lot of similarities across them all, but a lot of cultures have infused their own bit of flavor and culture into
Flavor,
it.
definitely. There are all different types of flavor. It's like the bulldog ramen that I obsessively watch in the Tiki Tacs. But the flavors, all the different flavors of the bulldog ramen, that's where I was going
Yeah,
with this.
right.
Yes.
Astrology.
Oh my God.
Nice. I do love lots of flavors of ramen. Astrology, though, has a lot of its own flavors and bits of culture and religion that gets infused in it across the globe. In China, they have a couple of systems of astrology. There's Bazi and Zewei Dushu, or purple star astrology, as it is known in English. So astrology also comes about in the Shang Dynasty. So same dynasty as that scapulomancy. They loved their bones and they loved their stars, y'all. Similar to Western astrology, boop, over here, in which there are zodiac signs that correspond to one's birth month, like Virgo, Sagittarius, Libra. Is that it? Is that all of us? Those zodiac signs, they're corresponding to one's birth month, or a little over, a little under sort of thing, like, but that a month-long period. In the Chinese zodiac, there are also 12 signs, but it corresponds to one's birth year, and they're animals. So rat, snake, ox, etc., etc. We're currently in the year of the snake, just in case anyone wanted to know that. In Chinese zodiac, it is using the position of the planets, or heavenly bodies, basically, any sort of celestial body, to divine.
I was gonna say, I got bougie with that. I called it
Yeah.
celestial bodies, soothsaying, all kinds of shit. I pulled out all the stops. I was very extra as much
Ooh,
as possible, just so you know.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear all your big words that you're going to throw at us here in a little bit, because these heavenly bodies, they what am I saying? Those positions of the heavenly bodies to divine, but China does a little more with it. So it's going to incorporate the yin and yang philosophy, as well as Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist philosophies. Not only that, we're going to add some more to it. We have the 5 elements, and then earthly branches and the heavenly stems. But those are some ancient China ones. Katie, you're gonna take our friends here down the Silk Road. I think it's a long road. I think it's a winding road. I think Paul McCartney had something
I'm
to say
guessing
about
so.
that.
Isn't some of it on water too, or no? Is it actually all on
Yeah,
land?
well, I'm sure I think there's like Silk Road, like naval pathways. But it's okay. We don't have to have the history of the Silk Road tonight, because
No, we
I
don't.
don't
But
know
that's
that
it, 'cause I didn't
offhand, and
fucking write it
I'm
down.
starting to sweat. But we're gonna go to ancient India. So take it away, Katie.
Much like China, India is also old as hell. And that's how I've begun this next segment.
It's
So
accurate.
when you were talking about how old China was, I was like, that tracks, because I said pretty much the same thing. India has a culture that dates back almost 5,000 years ago, with the Indus Valley in the year, Indus Valley Civilization, I can't read, in the year of 2500 BCE, or around there, so it's super, super old. So, as anyone would imagine, a culture this old obviously has a lot of different methods to divine or prophecy, or whatever adjective you prefer. They would read the sky to predict events and all kinds of shit. One of the oldest and most popular methods of ancient divination in India is using, wait, you guessed it, astrology. What? No way.
Yeah.
Studying these celestial bodies in the sky and their influence on human lives throughout a method called Jyotish. Jyotish is derived from the Sanskrit word Jyoti, meaning light or heavenly body, and is deeply rooted in the Vedas, which are the foundational texts of Hinduism, even older than the, if you know the book, the Gita,
Mm-hmm.
it's even older than that. So this was the precursor to the Gita. So anyone who knows what that is going to be like, wow, this is old as hell. And I'll be like, exactly.
Wow.
Jyotish seeks to understand the interconnectedness between the cosmos and human life, obviously, which can range from insight into personality, into your relationships, checking out your career paths, or even obviously big life events like, marriage, death. Jyotish uses several methods to divine insight into the universe. The first one being Kundali, or the horoscope. Yep, I can do it. Don't worry. Horoscope.
There you go.
Sometimes it is a horoscope. It's probably most people are familiar with it. It's a birth chart that maps the positions of the planets and stars at the time of birth, providing obviously a profile for you, kind of almost similar to the zodiac that we were talking earlier. It's at least based upon like where your birth order is in the calendar year. The second method is grahas, which is planets, which is however the celestial bodies influence the human life with specific characteristics and symbolic meanings. The best I could understand about that was where it's in the sky at what time of the year. Just to kind of give you like an idea of how that works.
Are you talking about the birth chart?
From what I could gather, it's like what's today? Saturday? If Jupiter is in a certain spot on a Tuesday at a certain time of the year, it means something. Is kind of
Yes.
what I got from that. Like that's what, but like stuff isn't like it's a good idea to plant stuff now and stuff like that. That's kind of what I understood from that. And I was like, okay. It wasn't really specific though. Oh, where do we? We're on the third, which is the Rashis, or the zodiac signs. Traditional zodiac, 12 different divisions of the zodiac, each associated with particular traits and energies. Pretty much how we would have it today. Not the same, probably important to point that out. Ancient India's zodiac is not the same as the zodiac we use now. It had more to do with, specifically more to do with their imagery of their gods and goddesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more customized, some might say. And okay, so this one I didn't quite understand it because it's just an extension of, in my opinion, the zodiac and the horoscope. It's called the Bavas, and it's which translates to houses, and it's 12 divisions of the horoscope representing different areas of life, such as relationships, career, and health. And I don't understand like why they really put it separately with the way this was breaking it down, unless it translates differently. You know how sometimes there's not an English word for certain like things that translate from, like in German, the feeling you get when you're at Oktoberfest. I can't remember what the German word is for it, but it specifically is outlining a feeling that you have there of like fullness from food, company, and joy. All of that. And there's a special German word for it that we don't have a translation to. That's kind of what I think I was getting at here. Because anytime I've delved into Hinduism, it's a lot more intricate than I realized versus what we're taught over here. And a lot of their astrology and all that stuff is very intimately tied with their religion, which is also really old. There was a lot of intricacies in how they interacted with each other, is what I'm badly and longly explaining to you. And it was really hard to try and put that into English, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the last Jyotish divining method was the dashas, or the cycle of time. So periods of planetary influence that can affect a person's life experiences, which is how I was more familiar with like the celestial body thing. A key difference from Western astrology is that Jyotish uses sidereal zodiac, which means it's a fixed zodiac. It's opposed to the tropical zodiac, which is based on seasons, which results in completely different planetary placements. So it never moves. It's always the same, which I think is kind of what we use. But they said that's not how our Western astrology worked. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to trust you because you seem to know what you're talking about. Jyotish, fun fact, is actually still studied and practiced today whilst keeping its roots firmly rooted in ancient traditions. Still in use. Thought that was kind of cool. Kind of a, I don't know, we don't have anything that old here in America. So I think about that and I'm like, damn, that it weathered well. Because we don't have anything near that old over in this country. Another common method for divination is a form of, it's an English word and I'm still going to struggle with it, palmistry?
Yeah.
Palm reading, right?
Palm reading.
It's in, I believe, Hindi. This is Hast Rekha Shastra. Probably butchered that. But it just literally translates to hand line reading. Very straightforward.
Yeah.
You can probably guess it's a system of fortune telling. No way. And character analysis based upon the lines and features of one's palm. It's like that stuff you'd always do in middle school when you would get that and you'd read each other's palms over at the sleepover.
Mm-hmm.
This method is also based in Vedic wisdom, which is those old ancient Hindu texts that precursored even the Gita. So still based on that religious symbolism, maybe would be the word. It shares a connection with the Jyotish because it's actually considered an integral part of it. So that palm reading and all that is used in the Jyotish practices. The system is used to determine an individual's physical, mental, and karmic potential and to predict potential future events and life paths. The practice also includes methods to mitigate negative influences through the use of yantras, which are geometric diagrams, so like drawing sacred geometric things, mantras, which are sacred sounds, and gemstones. Probably things we're all pretty familiar with. If you've walked into a crystal shop, you have experienced all of what I just talked about. So,
Mm-hmm. I like that the reading gives like some future too, like the karmic, like a karmic part of the reading, or like what future life paths and reincarnation might look like for you too. Like in addition to that, I'm like that's amazing.
yeah,
That like
I mean,
fits
they
in
went pretty
again with
hard.
like the culture too.
Yeah, India had like a lot going on. Like, we're going to be here a while. You might as well get comfortable. In ancient India, they also utilized a method of divination that was based in numerology. Basically, they did a little of everything. We're going to go through like pretty much the gambit here. Until we get to Rome. Rome took a really hard left turn. Yeah. So the ancient Indian number system, the precursor to the modern, precursor to the modern Hindu Arabic numeral system. It uses a decimal and a place value system with separate symbols for numbers 1 through 9. If you're thinking, wow, this sounds a lot like what we use now, you're correct. Keep along that line of thinking because it pretty much turns into that. With distinct symbols for powers of 10, and eventually evolving to include a symbol for 0. That's a really big deal in math, you guys. I had to study math for you all this week. That was rough.
Like, let me tell you some things about math. Big moments in math.
This is it right here. This is the big moment in math. This like leads us to our like current number system that we use. And I was like, I mean, spoiler alert, I should have said that further down, but oh well. The system originated in the Brahmi script used in India since at least the 4th century BCE. They had separate symbols for 1 through 9, 10, 100, 1000, and so on. So those multiples of 10. The system decimal based, and meaning that the value of a digit depended on its position within the number. Good luck figuring that one out. I literally sat there and stared at that for a good like 5 minutes trying to figure it out, and I was like, I don't know, but I do know where it goes on, it says, but with the concept of 0, a placeholder for empty spaces, it was crucial to develop a truly useful numbering system. I understood why 0 was important out of all of that. So there you go. Our lives would not be the same without 0. The little placeholder that he is. So these Indian numerals, along with the concept of zero, spread westward through the Middle East and into Europe, where they became known as the Arabic numerals, which pretty much are exactly what we use today, or like the one right before that. So there you go. They invented a bunch of math and then used it for divination shit. Because I don't know why you wouldn't. I've heard of people talk about this today, though. I don't know if any of the rest of you have, where they like, do you know what I'm talking about? There's like a number thing. There's a thing with
Numerology?
numbers. Huh?
Numerology? Like how many
Oh,
letters do you have
yeah.
in your first name and then your last name and those get added up together
Maybe
and then you
that's
got
where the
that kind of
numbers were
thing?
coming in. It sounded familiar, but I was like, I don't think I'm getting it, but
It's also your birth date. So it's, the month you were born. If you were born in January, it would be 01, not
mhm.
just one. I mean, when you're adding it all together, it doesn't really matter, but that's the way that they like to lay it out. And so I think I did this once in my life. It comes out to be like a life path number. I think -5 or something, like, if I remember correctly. So basically, until you get one number, 1 through 9, and then based on that number is related to, similar to the zodiac. It sheds light on your personality and your, potential strengths and challenges and things like that.
That's cool.
Interesting. That
Mhm.
makes a lot more sense now. Now I'm not sitting here going like, well, zero's important.
0 is important. Just
It
ask for
is.
that song "Zero to Hero" because that's all I'm hearing when you keep saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah. Okay. So, although commonly associated with Western practices, wait for it, we've arrived. Tarot card reading also found its way to ancient India. Although not originally from India, super important that I tell you that. It did find its way into their divination practices over time. Some of the tarot card decks, like the Sacred India Tarot, incorporate the Indian mythology, deities, and symbolism into their imagery and card meanings. The Sacred India Tarot deck is a deck that works solely within the parameters of sacred Indian mythology. So, you can only use it when it applies to that. That seemed very important from all the source material, so I made sure I included a bullet point for it. Now I was like, I'm just going to reiterate this for everybody.
I'm gonna have to look more into that. That sounds really fascinating.
You'll have to tell me
Yeah.
because I know nothing about it other than what I am reading you here. But it does tell me that the decks can be used, which to me sounds like any other tarot deck, to be completely honest with you, for readings, meditation, and gaining insights into various aspects of life. Much like other ancient civilizations, Indian divination also employed the use of runes. They would carve a symbol on stone or wood, and they were cast, or interpreted. Cast is another word for it. Uh, to predict the future outcomes or guidance. It sounds like they would put their little script on there and throw it in the river. And then there was a way to read that or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. A lot of water was associated. And I thought that was really interesting because water was a big deal for them. Water was, it's used a lot. And it's still, but again, like it seemed to me like a lot of the divination revolved heavily with the practice of Hinduism. So you would be divining whatever divining you're doing, you would be doing it like with the gods or like from them. So that's just kind of how it seemed a lot of this was explained to me. Oh, and that's it. That's India. So they used runes. There was some tarot card reading, numerology, palm reading, and of course the Jyotish, which is the like astrology part of it. So they
Yeah.
used all kinds of different methods there.
That's
Just to
really
list
cool
those
though.
off for you because I know that went on for a little bit. Um yeah, when I said they ran the gambit, they like really ran the gambit.
I like all those different methods and like how they can all be used together too. And like how it also is like a reflection of the culture and Hinduism too in all of those.
Yeah.
It's really
A
cool.
lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of that. And it really appeared to me like a lot of it was meant to be used together. Like the whole system was kind of designed to be used together. So
I like that a lot. It really sounds
Yeah.
like India decided that life should be very magical and mystical, and I really appreciate that about them. And that's I mean, that when I think of India in general, I do think of it as a very magical energy. So that tracks, but
It's the baton pass.
Yes. Go, hit, bugs, bunny, whatever your, I think mine was just go hit. Back in your relay race running days, everybody,
Wait, you yelled stuff?
Yeah, that's how you tell the next person to like go and like time out your and then hit would be telling them that you're going to pass the baton or whatever
Oh,
your two
Mr.
words were
Taylor
that you
told
said.
us when to run.
run, Dick.
Mr. Taylor would tell you when to run and you would
Yeah,
listen to him. That
exactly.
man was big. Oh, Mr. Taylor. So we're going to
We miss
keep
the
on
sound.
our track of our track and field here is the Silk Road. We're still going to be going down that Silk Road,
We're
heading to
still on the Silk
Mesopotamia.
Road. Are we
And
there yet? No.
no, we're going all across Asia, everybody. You're going to just have to deal with it. It's long. You should have gone to the bathroom before we got on the
You should
road.
have. Take your
Don't
pictures.
don't make me have to stop this car again, guys. Goodness gracious. Because we are in Mesopotamia and the Levant. There are a lot of ancient civilizations when we look at these two geographical areas. Mesopotamia refers to the area that follows the Tigris and Euphrates rivers from
The
the
cradle of
Mediterranean Sea,
civilization.
the Fertile Crescent. What was that?
I said it's the cradle of civilization.
Yep.
Yes, the
There
Fertile
it is.
Crescent.
Fertile Crescent. There it is. So we're going from the Mediterranean Sea to the Persian Gulf. So these days, the modern countries there are Iraq and Kuwait. And the ancient civilizations that were there were known as, you guys ready for it? This is just bringing back some middle school history right here. We've got the Sumerians, we've got the Babylonians, we've got the Assyrians. Those are like some heavy hitter names there. They were like, oh, I remember learning
Yeah,
about that.
I know that.
Mesopotamia, folks. And the Levant, on the other hand, is present day regions of Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, and Israel. So it's really like the coastal part of the Mediterranean Sea. So here are the most popular methods that historians have some interesting records of. So we have celestial divination and extispicy. Extispicy. Goodness gracious. Unique New York. See, I couldn't even do it slow, folks. Here we are. The two were often used together to gain knowledge. So, boom, we got our heavenly bodies, we got our extispicy. You're going to find out what it is in a minute. You're going to be like,
That
oh,
one just
oh
occurs
no,
all throughout your story so that I can keep hearing you say that.
extispicy. I actually wrote in very specific
Phonetic, so
phonetics
that when
for
you're
myself.
stoned,
Yeah,
you'll still say it right.
Mhm.
I feel that.
It almost looks like extra spicy. Like it's almost like extra spicy is what it looks
Yeah.
like. But with celestial divination in Mesopotamia and the Levant, it was centered around watching these celestial bodies and different events in the sky, like a meteor shower or a comet that's in the sky. Historians have their first written evidence of this in a letter from the city of Mari in the Euphrates, circa 1765 BCE. The recipient of the letter was a king from a Beirut. Now, a Beirut is one who practices extispicy, in which one sacrifices an animal, often a sheep, and then divines from reading the animal's
That's how you
entrails.
say that. Oh,
Extispicy.
I'm so glad you said it first.
Oh, you have that one? Extispicy?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. A lot of extispicy likes to happen in a couple of these cultures. The liver was thought to be a tablet from the gods because it was like that easy to read. So entrails, yes, but especially liver. Liver was extra
Entrails. The good
extra
stuff.
readable. Good, clear messages on the liver. So if you're strictly doing liver readings, that's called heptoscopy. Heptoscopy. Let me tell you, the Mesopotamians love some extispicy. The ancient Greeks and the Romans will do it too, but we're just not quite there yet. But it is one of the oldest divination methods that has written evidence for it. In that letter that I just mentioned a moment ago, this Beirut was combining extispicy and celestial divination and was telling the king that extispicies, like doing this, man, I've had to say this word over and over again, But his divination in his extispicy has shown that the recent lunar eclipse would have just some bad vibes. He's like, I don't feel great about it. I don't think it's going to bode ill for you, Your Majesty. I don't think it's going to be so bad for you, the king, but I'm going to have to look into this a little further, do some more extispices. There's going to be some more divining here. So that was the first instance that we get. And then we find that there are actually dozens of similar letters from Mari that have revealed extispicy. And it was at this time the most prestigious and reliable means of reading the god's intentions. The king or diviner would formulate a question. The gods answered with a yes or a no. And if necessary, rituals and sacrifices were repeated until the gods deemed it was time to give a favorable response. In fact, there's even, here we go, going back in history here, literature class now. There's a reference to extispicy in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the epic poem that it's the history's oldest or like first fictional story. Yeah, 3rd millennium BCE for that one. 3000 to 2001 BCE. So holy shit, it's at least that old if it made it into the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, as I mentioned earlier, astrology is really old and can be found virtually in every culture that we've seen so far tonight. And it's in Mesopotamia that we also find some of the earliest recorded evidence of it, dating back to the 2nd millennium BCE, or 2000 to 1001 BCE. Babylonian astrology included observations of celestial bodies and events, and even a series of 70 cuneiform tablets that contain 7,000 celestial omens, called the Enuma Anu Enli. Babylonians also developed 12 astrological signs, and some of those were actually later incorporated into the Western zodiac. However, it's the ancient Greeks who named them after star signs and constellations and then linked them to specific days. So like everyone's kind of building off of these different divination practices. Just the Babylonians are also the first to create personal horoscopes based on the position of the planets. Just like the horoscope girlies like to do it today. They're like, let me tell you your horoscope. Babylonians were like, we can also do that. So that was where we first see written evidence of that.
We can originally do that. It was our idea.
This was our thing. Okay. Also, since this is the area of the world that we live in, that we're currently in right now, if you're living in an area that has a lot of sand or a lot of stone, why not use that for divination as well? So in this entire region, so from ancient Persia through the Arabian Peninsula and all the ancient civilizations there, this whole large area, geomancy was very popular. And it's a form of divination known in Arabic as ilm al-rami, which means the science of the sand. I love that.
It's bougie sounding.
It's beautiful,
too.
right? Gosh,
Yeah.
Arabic got some good words. In geomancy, which has some similarities to China's I Ching that I was having a whole struggle with earlier, it involves 16 random series of lines in the sand or dirt or on stone. And you get a generation of 4 tetragrams. Your first line, those are your mothers, those tetragrams. And then those are then combined to produce a second line of 4. Those are called daughters. Then the mothers and daughters combine and they produce nieces. So like think of this almost like a family tree or like a flow chart sort of thing. And then those combine, they make another row. And there's a left and a right witness. And then they combine and make a judge. I thought of it like basically like a family tree. Is kind of how I was thinking of it. But each one of those lines has a different fortune in them. And you get the whole thing. You're getting the fortune, but also you get astrological connections to it. You get elemental connections to it, like calendar events connected to it. Humoral, as in the medical humors, like biles and things like that. And then physiogenomical correspondences. You get all of your fortune in geomancy. And then it came to Europe from this region during the Middle Ages. I think this is kind of funny because I have some things that make it to Europe after, like in the Middle Ages.
Mhm.
right in the prime
After the
time of the
Crusades?
Crusades, but none
Yeah.
of my sources specifically say, "Oh, that was likely this is coming back from Crusaders or those who would
Right.
pilgrimage or something," you know?
No,
But
they neglected to mention that portion of
yeah,
it.
I think that was interesting. I was like, "Oh, so like after the Crusades?" It doesn't, but it
But
doesn't explicitly say that. So, but I
mhm.
mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, I
But
suppose
we
these
could
things could be
infer.
traded, but they're like specifically in the 12th century. And I was like,
Yeah.
or like the 11th century too. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I bet.
yeah, geomancy probably came then. But once it arrives in Europe, however it may get there, it gets a new set of meanings and ways to divine within it. Europe does it a little different because everyone's adding their own culture into these things. But that is geomancy and the
See,
divination
these are
of
the
the
ramen flavors we were talking about.
ancient Middle East. Yeah. So let's keep going west. We're not going to go too far west. Just a little hop, skip, and a jump over. We're going to hop in
Boat ride?
a watercraft of some sort. We're going to go. We're going to go for a little trip down the Nile. Katie's going
I
to
hope
take
it's
us.
hippo proof.
It's the hippo is proof watercraft. It's no gators,
Can't
no
think of a more
hippos.
terrifying river to hop on a boat.
It's okay. We're gonna. It's the safest. It's the safest little watercraft you're ever gonna. It's fine. It's in our imaginations. You're not gonna get
That's
eaten by
good.
it. We're all good. We're gonna go down through ancient Egypt. Oracle Bones, get your hot and fresh Oracle Bones here, fresh from the ox. Write your question on them, put them in the fire. Not really sure what I'm doing here, hawking Oracle Bones, but hey, in this economy, you gotta do whatever you need to do. Welcome to the intermission. We're so glad that you're here. We hope that you've been enjoying yourself in the smoke circle as we are diving into a very long, rich history of divination throughout a handful of ancient civilizations. Now, we know that these aren't the only civilizations in history that have a history around divination. There are many all over the world, every continent, every culture. You're going to find this. You're going to find divination as a part of it. All right, looks like these bones are ready to come out of the fire. First one to read, please like, rate, review, subscribe, follow on whatever platform you are listening or watching from. Really helps our little show grow and get seen by more eyes and ears. Also, make sure you're following us on social media. We're on Instagram at High Tales of History, or on TikTok at High Tales of History Pod. We have a YouTube channel, High Tales of History, as well as the Best Buds Club. That's our Patreon club. Over there, we have historical movies on the big brown couch. We do some historical cooking. We have mini episodes, which are our little bonus episodes that we have on various topics. A lot of women's history over there, seeing as it's Women's History Month this month, and hey, every month as far as we're concerned. Also, if you are a member of the Best Buds Club, at any paid level, you get 2-day early access to our episodes. So they come out 2 days early for our Patreon members. How about that? So you don't need to get out your crystal ball so you can see into the future. The future is just there on Patreon for you. There it is. That's patreon.com/High Tales of History. And this year for 2025, we really have a goal to get more reviews, get more ratings for our show. So whatever platform you're listening on, please rate it, review it. I know on Spotify, it's just a quick star system. So just, hit the stars that you think we deserve. Hopefully that's 5, but we'll leave that up to you. We won't tell you what to do. You're an independent person. We're not bossy pants. I might be an older sister, but I'm not a bossy pants. Okay, maybe a little. All right, let's get back to some more divination and let's puff pass it on to part 2.
To say the ancient Egyptians had a rich and complex system of divination is the understatement of the century. The Egyptians sought guidance and insight from the gods through various divination tools. Again, this one's very based in religion as well. I don't know if they all are, but mine were. What got assigned to me by the homework, I didn't have to... Not rock, paper, scissors. What do we do? I didn't have to bottle leaf grinder shit this week, and that's fantastic.
So, it's a gift, small gift for me to you. That's what I can
Thank
do for
you. My anxiety didn't need any more help this week. Okay, you're going to love this first one. Their first one was dream interpretation. And I forgot how fucking wild the Egyptians were. And I was like, oh, such a good time. So dreams held immense importance in ancient Egypt. They were believed to be direct messages from the gods. So whereas now, like sometimes it's like oh, you saw weird stuff today, or somebody told you something terrifying about like Jim Carrey eating children, and then you had the most unhinged horror movie style dream ever. It's probably not a message from the universe. It's probably just an overactive imagination, too much sugar, and cruel, older, sibling style people in your life. So, you know. But in ancient Egypt, that was a message, and it was an important one. The ancient Egyptians believed dreams were a way for the gods to communicate to humans, sometimes offering advice, comfort, or even foretelling the future. To receive this divine guidance, people would go to sanctuaries and scream sanctuary like in Hunchback of Notre Dame. No, just kidding. That's my favorite thing. Do you remember? Well, have you seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame? You have, right? It's easily one of Disney's most underrated films and soundtracks of all time. I will die on that hill. I will fight you on that hill. You'll die on that hill because you won't win. Anyway. And he's like holding Esmeralda over his arms. He's like, sanctuary. It's a good time.
Demi Moore's best role as Esmeralda.
That was Demi Moore?
Yes.
Sorry, that I just had to take that side quest. All right, why was I talking about that? Oh, yeah. So to receive divine guidance, people would go to sanctuaries and sleep on special dream beds. For those of you who are listening, I'm doing the dink dink thing, which are air quotes if you have listening for the first time and have no idea what that meant. So in these dream beds, this is where you would hope to receive your message from the gods. Because they valued dreams, Egyptians meticulously recorded their dreams and their interpretations. While some dreams were considered straightforward, you could probably figure it out on your own because everybody seemed to have to be sort of in touch with, spirituality in these days. Other dreams required the expertise of professional dream interpreters. Wouldn't it be wild to be one of those guys? They study the dreams and potentially have dreams about them to gain further insight. So just a couple examples of what they believed. Dreaming of the moon was considered a good sign, indicating the gods' forgiveness. Seeing oneself in a mirror in a dream was a bad omen, suggesting the need to find a new spouse. Very intense, very specific as well. I'm thinking
I was
like,
thinking it was like
oh,
death, but like,
right?
okay.
I was like, someone's gonna steal
The
your
way you
soul.
said
And
that,
they're
I was
like,
like, oh
no,
no.
divorce. And you're like, oh,
Wait
I
a second.
mean,
I just
I
had a
mean,
dream of me looking at myself in a mirror, and I'm single. So, advice.
Is it like a double negative or something at some point? Like, is it?
am I ready to move on?
What does that mean? What does it
Does this
mean?
mean I get back in the dating game as if it's two negatives make a positive? Is that the positive sign?
Turns out I'm my own one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There you go.
that's what that means.
Right.
Maybe all see ourselves in the mirror, love ourselves. What am I doing? Go ahead, Katie.
It's like, what? Similar to the practice seen in ancient China, the Egyptians also used, they called them oracle bones for divination purposes, but if you want to be all scapula about it, you can. The bones,
Scapulamancy.
typically from animals such as oxen or turtles, they also use turtle shells, were inscribed with symbols or questions. The cracks formed upon heating the bone, able to interpret answers or guidance, blah, blah, blah. We're going to fast forward through that because we know about it. Ancient Egypt also partook, as many cultures do, in, you'll never guess, astrology
Astrology.
and,
Yeah, there it
and
is. Yeah.
observing celestial bodies.
Check.
Ancient Egyptian astrology was influenced by the Babylonian practices, focusing on the stars and their influence on human affairs, particularly through the concept of Mat or Mot, M-A-A-T, which represented the cosmic order and balance in the use of deities associated with each celestial body. So this concept of Mot or Mat is encompassing truth, justice, balance, and cosmic order. It was central to the Egyptian beliefs and influenced their understanding of the universe. While not as developed as later astrological systems, the Egyptians did have a zodiac, which was associated with different periods of the year. So it didn't sound like it was like birth related. It was more like the zodiac would change based upon like what season you were in.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. Like their Babylonian counterparts, Egyptian astrologers began to produce horoscopes to determine the fate of a newborn. They were very Babylonian inspired.
Yeah.
But weren't they like neighbors?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Close. I mean, the geographical locations are close enough that that would have been like a easy spread through like trade and
Mhm.
being close enough.
The ancient Egyptians also employed the use of scrying mirrors. Scrying mirrors, not ears. What? But use your scrying ears to look at your scrying mirrors. What? Okay, so these would have been made of black obsidian, or polished metal, even. It's like really shiny metal. They were employed in the ancient Egyptian divination. By gazing into the reflective surface, the diviners would enter a trance-like state. I'm guessing drugs were involved. It didn't explicitly say that, but I hope it was mushrooms.
Well,
They
no,
would
I
go
think is
on.
it kind of like one of those like magic eyes almost? Sandra, have you ever used scrying before? I almost
All the
think of it like you're just looking at something and just like whatever you're visually kind of having like reflected back.
yes.
And or it's like one of those like magic eye things from the 90s. And I just realized that we might know what that is, and Katie has no idea.
Okay. Did we age ourselves?
We just did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Look it up.
Also, if you have people who have ADHD are more readily able to transfix their eyes in that way. Did you know that? So if you're neurospicy, it's easier to use a magic eye.
Oh, I use these all
Yeah,
the
I
time.
love them. I was like, good at it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I use these all the time.
Like, it's a boat. Like,
Yeah.
it's a
Oh, dude,
castle.
I'm bomb at those things. Bomb at them.
And honestly, scrying can be as simple as like, oh my gosh, look at my piece of toast. Can you see Jesus in it? Because look at it. It's
the
can be
same.
that.
Okay.
It can also be
Sell it on eBay.
yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Water, fire. Would fire be in that as well too, or would that be more of like a pyromancy, or like not pyromancy, pyro, whatever?
Good question. I have done scrying using fire, but I don't know if that is called something else.
I feel like I read about it having a different name, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So maybe they just don't. Because I was like, oh, you could scry in fire. Because I talk about later too, but then I was like, maybe I don't say that because it has a different name. It starts with pyro something.
I think you're right.
The ancient Egyptians believed in a divine force called the Heka, Heka, which could be used to influence the world through words, images, speech, and ritual. The concept of seeing or revealing was important in their religious and magical practices. Another method of Egyptian divination is the ostraka. It refers to the shards of pottery or limestone in which questions or situations were written. The Egyptians believed that the gods could influence the outcome by inscribing their answers or messages on these fragments. Diviners would then interpret the markings to provide guidance or advice. It was actually a cheaper alternative to papyrus, which is why it was so popular, because papyrus was difficult and expensive to make back in the day. Ostraka was often rapidly and cursively written in hieratic, do you remember that old? It's the cursive script of ancient Egypt. It's
Okay.
Hieratic, hieratic. I know that I studied it in ancient civilizations freshman year, but very, very briefly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know offhand.
Ostraka can bear a wide range of images and text, including depictions of the royal and divine figures. Some ostraka are also finished works of art, while others are clearly sketches. So they had, just to run through them so that we all remember what we went through, because mine had like a lot. Dream interpretation was one. The bones, just like China.
Yeah. Scapulomancy.
Yep. Astrology, as everybody, because I'm pretty sure everybody had astrology. If anyone didn't, it's like, what were you even doing?
Did you look
Scrying
up at the
mirrors,
sky at all? There's a whole other thing up there, guys.
right?
Did
Like,
you look up?
and shit lights up at night. Like, I thought we were all on the same page here. Like, what the hell? So the scrying, and then the ostraka, which is like the pottery of the divination
That one's
pottery.
neat. I want to know more about that one. I'll see if I can find some pictures to put up during this. So people can
Definitely,
kinda
yeah.
See what all these things look like.
Yeah, definitely. Pottery, dude. Divination pottery.
I like that.
Just you wait till we get to Rome. It gets even more wild.
Well, before we get to Rome, we just got to make a little stop in between on the way because we got to go through Greece. We're going to go up north, ancient Greece. These folks had a whole Mount Olympus of gods and goddesses that they had to
Sure did.
appease and watch out for. Zeus, you little shit. I'm looking at you right there.
Dude, anything that wasn't nailed down, Zeus was humping it. It's like,
God,
Jesus, Hal.
Zeus, stop it. Stop it right
Honestly.
now. Yeah, so there's a lot that the people had to be worrying about and people they're trying to appease with the gods and goddesses. And in order to communicate with them, the ancient Greeks had a really rich history of divination and a handful of methods that they also used. So we'll get the animals out of the way. They also used scapulomancy, just like ancient China and in Egypt, but we're going to add some birds to the mix. So augury is the practice of divination that interprets the flight patterns, calls, and behavior of birds. You know what? It's like, have you ever seen is it mermation? Is that what those are called? Like where like starlings all like kind of, and it's like a really beautiful wave in the sky. These birds doing that. So like, I'm like, imagine you're getting a lot of information from one of those, but even like the calls and the behavior of the birds. This is great. So the Greeks, they believed that birds were direct messengers from the gods. So a skilled augur would note the species, the flight direction, the flock formation, and just general behavior of the birds, and would predict omens and predict the future. Also, so the ancient Greeks built on Babylonians' horoscopes and created astrology that we might recognize a little closer to our Western astrology. Same thing with the Egyptians, and guess what? Same thing with the Greeks. They loved their astrology, and it was the main divination for ancient Greeks and ancient Romans. Hellenistic astrology began in 4th century BCE and drew from a few cultures like the Babylonians and ancient Egyptians, which included the belief that the soul could ascend to the stars. It also included philosophical schools that were pioneered by Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Sorry, I had a small moment where I was like, my brain wanted to say Socrates, just like in Bill and Ted.
Right?
And I was like, I don't think I just
Every
pronounced
time.
Socrates right. And then I was like, because you wanted to say Socrates, you big dumb dork. So,
Dude, every time the menace
main
in my brain is
philosophers.
like, do it. I'm like, no, don't. What's wrong with
Socrates.
you?
It's like, dang
How long have you known this?
astrology was practiced all over and could be used to predict one's destiny, avert undesirable events, and find the right timing to launch new enterprises. It could also advise on financial fortunes or the condition of one's soul. It was conceived of as a natural science, so it was justified by physical influences and, or considered to be divination concerned with communication with the gods and goddesses. By the time we get to 4th century CE, its popularity, though, starts to decline. We got Christianity on the rise, and these Hellenistic cultures are starting to fragment, the kind of Greece, and then also Roman Empire, rise of Christianity. There's a lot of things that were happening at this moment. So the astrology kind of goes underground for a little bit. It lives on in Persia, it spreads to India, and then comes back to Islamic countries and re-imported back into Europe again in the 12th century. I'm going to say Crusades, although my sources don't explicitly say so. Interesting. But
Probably.
But anyway, that's the time period that it's going up through there. So speaking of chit-chatting with the gods and goddesses, we get to meet a famous name in ancient Greek divination, the Oracle of Delphi. It was located at the Temple of Apollo, and the oracle herself was more properly referred to as the Pythia. She was the high priestess, chosen amongst the priestesses of the temple. Pythias were likely women from higher class families, educated, well-read. Love it. Were believed to channel messages directly from Apollo himself while in a dreamlike state. So again, this is now more prophecy, or like prophecy within the divination. Originally, the Pythia were only called upon about once a year, but at the height of its popularity, up to 3 Pythii, I think that's how we're going to pluralize that, were known to hold a title at the time. So they got busy. Now, in order to channel and interpret the word of Apollo, the Pythia had to bathe in the Castalian spring. a goat or black ram was sacrificed. And then she went into this little chamber under the temple, which was fumigated with barley meal and laurel leaves. I have a picture up for you guys so you can kind of see an artist's rendition of this. Is a very famous Oracle of Delphi painting. She's sitting there. Okay. The Pythia would then be on this, it's like a tripod shaped covered cauldron, and it would be over a crack in the ground. She'd be sitting there and hanging out. Amongst all the burning laurel leaves and all the barley meal, she would enter a trance-like state, channel Apollo, pronouncing the prophecy from the questions asked or for the year. It's very worth noting. Laurel leaves and barley meal, they are not hallucinogenic. It was just part of the sacred practice. But so the laurel leaves and the barley meal are not. But you know what is hallucinogenic is ethylene. And it turns out that there are not one but two geological fault lines, and there's volcanic fumes that leak out, and the Castalian spring also contains ethylene. Now, I always assumed, based on very little I knew about the Oracle, but also like having seen this picture, I just always just assumed that she was just high as hell, and that was like part of like what helped her trance state, and I was like, oh, if they're hallucinogenic, and then you're also, you're divining as you're like, okay, but there's actually never been conclusive enough evidence as to like if that was actually the case. There's no like record of that, or whether her trances were induced by the ethylene or the volcanic fumes, or she was just really great at meditating, or she's gifted, like whatever it might be. But like, yeah, there were some there were some fumes at the Oracle at Delphi. But the Oracle of Delphi was constructed in the 8th century BCE, and the final prophecy was given around 393 CE. So a lot of centuries there, which is basically after the Roman Emperor Theodosius orders the closure of all pagan sanctuaries. So again, that rise of Christianity, and he's like, oh, nope, temple's done. Hey, look at that. Just segue right into Rome. I was talking about a Roman emperor. Take us on home, country roads.
Oh my God.
Ancient Rome. Let's
Ancient Rome's
do
a
some
good fucking time.
divination. All right.
So, and this is literally what I wrote here. I said ancient Rome was frankly fucking wild when it comes to divination. It was fucking insane. There's a lot of interesting methods for future divining and whatnot. But let me tell you, a method of divination that they used, I shit you not, involved a chicken Ouija board and sacred chickens. And yes, you heard that correctly.
Tell me everything about this, Katie. What's happening here?
Okay.
Rome, what are you doing?
Sometimes I don't want to know. In ancient, did you know that they did their laundry in urine? I found that out. I had to find that out through the research for this, if that gives you an idea on how good this gets.
Why?
Yeah. Apparently, they thought it had whitening properties, and I was like, why?
It's got yellowing properties for sure. Oh my God.
So, like, here's my thought. Like, does pee contain ammonia? Like, do you think they, like, concentrate it and, like, the ammonia whiten? Ammonia doesn't whiten, though, does it? I thought it was a type of bleach. I don't know. I had a lot of questions that went through when I read that, and I was like, I don't know how to feel.
We all will.
Anyway.
Yeah. We'll all have some questions here.
We're going to stay with the ancient, we're going to hang out with the sacred chickens, and we'll just leave the urine laundry.
Yeah.
For another episode. So in ancient Rome, electromancy, Alec as in the name, ALECTRYOMANCY, electryomancy, there we go, or divination using chickens. Shut the fuck up now. Priests observe chickens' behavior, particularly their eating habits, to interpret omens and make decisions, especially regarding war and public safety. Important bird flu starts here. So the procedure was that a few handfuls of grain were scattered on the ground, and the chickens, the sacred chickens, were released. They rushed out of their cages, and as they greedily gobbled up the grain, it was taken to be a great omen. the attacking course would then be taken by the warring Romans. So these motherfuckers, hold on, let me finish this and then I'm going to tell you. I'll be indignant in a moment. However, if the chickens hesitated to come out or showed a lack of interest in the grain, it was considered a warning that the battle will be lost and should be avoided. These motherfuckers carried sacred chickens around with them wherever they went.
And I was gonna say, like, I didn't realize that they used it in war and in conflict, because I was gonna say, oh my God, could you imagine like standing there like on the front lines and being like, I can't believe we're fucking here because of a chicken, you know? Like
Right?
but
That's what I
sacred
said.
chickens make sense. But yeah, you in battle situations, my goodness.
How does a chicken get chosen as the sacred chicken?
That it didn't say. I'm very interested to know how. You had to be a special chicken, I'm sure.
Chicken lineage?
It's very possible. Only the holiest of chickens.
Not how.
So they also had a chicken Ouija board?
This I need to know more about. What?
Okay. So a circle's drawn on the ground. And they put letters all around it. Like it's like they kind of like make their own thing, and then they place grain on each letter. The chickens then write you a message by the order that they peck the grain, and then you have to interpret the message. But it has to be the sacred chickens.
Who do we know that owns a farm?
I mean, there
Who's
can't
got
be
chickens?
Well, who's
got
got
chickens these
sacred
days?
chickens? They gotta be sacred chickens.
The first one to give a message would be sacred.
Right? Or you have to pick. Oh, I bet what you do is you scatter a bunch of grain on the ground, and only the ones that eat the ancient grain get to go, because they're, yeah. I mean, I just made that up right now. I pulled that out of my ass, but it sounded good, so we're going with it. Okay, another popular method in ancient Rome, sadly we're moving on from the sacred chickens. Last story is sacrifice. If you're highly sensitive, I suggest you skip the next 90 seconds or so. In ancient Rome, a priest called a haruspex was tasked with carrying out divination by looking at the entrails of sacrificed animals, often a sheep's liver. The purpose was to understand the gods' attitudes and ensure favorable outcomes for, individuals, states, community, all that crap. The process typically involved the subject having their chest opened while still alive, and their organs were taken out in a particular order and read until they died. Gruesomely, the priest carrying out the sacrifice work would, aside from studying the color and shape of each organ, also note the way the victim screamed, how they bled, and the manner of their death spasms.
Fuck's sake, Rome. Like,
That's
the
what
rest
I
of the
said.
world doing okay with it. I mean, like, it's still animal sacrifice, but my God, Rome.
At least they were dead.
Have you no
quickly.
decency? What is going on?
That's what I said.
They're like, how can we make this as horrible and awful and terrible?
Rome is so good at that.
Everybody else has their own method of doing it. How do we make it so much fucking worse? That's the way. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. This information was taken and interpreted for omens and predictions, basically. Yeah. So, on a less brutal note, another method that is not any less exciting, but less gruesome for sure, is urine reading.
Oh, God.
They're like
I figured you would
Victorians
know
of
this.
ancient
I thought that's why
times.
you gave me Rome. I thought you gave me the batshit one, and I was like, that checks out. That's fair. I'll handle that like a
I'm
champ.
kind of
But I was
jealous
like,
that
all
I
right.
gave you that one. I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. I wish I read about it, but I'm learning about it now. But I mean, who's the asshole who's like, you know what? I suppose like you use what you have around you. You've got birds in the sky. Okay. You've got sand and stone around you. Okay. That makes sense. There's, all these different
Well, you've
things
always got urine around you.
but you've got pee, and they're like, what if we just flung it around while we peed? And then we'll just read the designs.
This feels like someone got drunk and was
Yeah.
like, wow.
Like,
they drank a
what
lot of
message
wine
is
back
it?
then, for what it's worth. Okay.
Sorry,
This
I'll
is
stop being
perhaps one of
disrespectful.
the more unusual methods of Roman fortune telling, and one of the ways of interpreting waste liquid varied considerably, with some reading omens in the taste or smell of the secretion, and others looking at the flow and the color.
Hate to draw the short end of stick on that one.
For real.
No.
Apparently the bubbles were also important. The subject urinated into a chamber pot before the contents were examined. Large bubbles spaced apart signified good luck in particular incoming wealth, while small and densely packed bubbles are a bad omen, an indicator of approaching sickness or death. Isn't that like diabetes?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Were they like old school diagnosing diabetes?
They got it right though, as bonkers as it is. Like they were like, something's different here that we have to read
That's
into.
what I said. I was like, I'm actually impressed. I'm
That's
pretty
really
sure that's
impressive,
like a
actually.
diabetic sign.
That's the
So,
case, yeah.
large bubbles spaced apart. Not bad, y'all. Actually, before we sat down here, I'm pretty sure that's what I did up in the toilet. So there you go. I really hope there's incoming wealth my way. Sorry, no one wanted to know that, but it just, there's no filter engaged here. But like also, if the wealth is good health, I'm so into it. Okay, moving on from P reading as opposed to T reading. In ancient Rome, augury, as Laurel already discussed, was a religious practice where priests, augurs, observed bird behavior, other natural events, la 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 la. There were priests or officials in Roman religious colleges whose duty it was to observe and interpret all those signs, so you had to be educated for it. Besides bird behavior, augurs also considered thunder and lightning, and even accidental occurrences like spilling of salt or sneezing. So they were trained in a realm of omens, let us say. The augurs interpreted thunder in the left portion of the sky to be good luck, but thunder on the right to be a bad omen. Thunder was also interpreted as the harbinger of death, with different meanings depending on the day of the week. Thunder, like I said, was interpreted as the harbinger of death. Depending on the day of the week you heard it. Sundays usually signaled the imminent death of a priest or a scholar. Mondays, a woman. Wednesdays and Thursdays, beggars and sex workers. Friday, statesmen and generals. Thunder on Saturdays was a portent of a more indiscriminate threat, such as plague or famine. What? And Tuesdays was never mentioned. So Tuesday's cool. Tuesday, nothing happens.
You would want all the thunder on that day then. Or lightning or whatever it is. Sorry.
I guess so, yeah. I would, for sure.
It's everything's wrong, otherwise the rest of it. Well, actually.
This is true.
Huh.
So, and because these motherfuckers couldn't get any weirder, well, they can't get weirder, that's the problem. They also used eggs for divination. Sacred eggs from sacred chickens. The method known to occultists as Umancy, it's double O, Mancy.
Umancy, I'd probably say, yeah.
The soothsaying of the huevos took many forms. One popular method was to drop an egg white, into boiling water and make predictions from the shapes that formed. A nice circular mass indicated that a wedding was on the horizon. But an irregular snake-like shape was taken to be a warning of approaching danger. So there you go.
The egg divination still is used pretty heavily in it's not boiling water, it's a cup of water, and you crack the egg and you let it, the egg yolk and the white, and however it forms or doesn't form will tell you certain things if someone is putting negative energy on you, or if you've been hexed or something along those lines, or if you're kosher. So that is absolutely still very prevalent.
Wow. Is it used like in a certain place in the world, or tip more likely, or no?
No.
I've never heard of that one yet.
Like a little witch tip.
It seems very like sacred chickeny. I have a feeling that's probably where it came from. I just feel like to make the jump from sacred chickens to sacred eggs, not so far. So according to one Roman chronicler, a pregnant Livia Drusilla, I don't know, we don't care who she is, used an egg to predict the sex of her unborn baby. She incubated the egg between her breasts, and when it was ready to hatch, she held the egg in her hand. If the chick was a boy, this indicated that her baby would also be a boy. And then, obviously, if it was girl, vice versa. I think it turned out to be a boy. I didn't really include it here because it didn't really further our narrative. But there you go. Just gotta incubate a little baby chick on your breast. Shove him in there.
Have breasts to, like, incubate. Like,
doesn't everybody
just tape it on? You just tape. just rolls down.
Doesn't everybody get boobies when they're like pregnant? I thought that was a thing.
Fair. That yeah. I mean, but question, because why not? How long are we incubate? Is this like an hour process? Like this is a ready egg, or is
Until
this
I don't know.
like
Or
now?
they just go and find one, shake it, and whatever feels full, they just hand it to you. I have no idea. They didn't specify.
It's literally giving when you're in high school, and they give you an egg to take care of, and please make sure that you're doing well. This indicates whether or not you'll be a great parent.
Yeah, with your egg.
We never had. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there was a class where you could do that, but I didn't ever get like one like that. We got to build. So we got an egg that was our nucleus, and we had to build the stuff around it so that the nucleus wouldn't die or something like that. And we dropped it, like we went up a ladder and dropped it. And mine was lasted the second longest.
Oh.
Sand, it turned out, was the best because it just would fall and like cup the egg under it before it would crack. So sand was best. I used toothpaste and spaghetti noodles. And the toothpaste I put in like a Ziploc bag and then hot glued the Ziploc bag together so it was like around the nucleus, the eggshell of the nucleus of the cell. And then I put cooked spaghetti noodles all around it, and that was my cell. And it dropped, and mine lasted the second longest in all of the 8th grade that year.
Wow.
Anytime I say
Science.
shit like this, I'm like, wow, no, I was actually always weird. I'm actually more normal now than I was as a kid. Anyway, so unbroken eggs were also rubbed onto the stomachs of pregnant women and then cracked open. Various meanings were inferred from the raw egg. I feel like this is an obvious one. A double yolk means twins. It's like, well, yeah, duh. Egg divination. And of course, the fan favorite, the last one that the Romans had to offer, was scrying. In ancient Rome, the scryers took speculare, which linked to the Latin word for mirror and to look. The Roman Emperor Didius Julianus, who ruled in the spring of 193 CE, he famously used a mirror to predict the outcome of a battle. According to the Historia Augusta, the Roman history book, which I know how we all feel about these, Laurel, Julianus worked with magicians to perform a rite in front of a mirror, and a young boy was brought in with the job of reading the mirror. The boy in the mirror saw the downfall of Julianus and the success of Severus, one of his rivals. This prediction proved correct when Severus defeated Julianus and had him killed in June of 193 CE. I seem to recall he ignored his warning or something like that and went ahead with the attack anyway, when he shouldn't have, and he did it anyway.
No.
Mm-hmm. So we had the scrying, egg divination.
Ugh. So fun. What about the chickens?
Yeah.
Sacred chickens?
Sacred chickens, if you want to add the sacred chickens in next to the fancy eggs. And then you can put the augury.
Okay, yep.
Which we had. And then we had the urine reading. You can't forget about that.
Yeah.
And we had the super gruesome sacrifice reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
blocked that out already.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I don't blame you. That one was a bit rough. Did full on.
Ancient Rome. You're like, yeah, let's just crank this up a notch or two and just do it different.
Yeah, as soon as I got to Rome, I was like, oh my.
Well, thank you, Katie. Appreciate it.
And there we have it, part 1 on the long history of divination. It's really interesting to find out how many of those forms of divination have been used for millennia. So we hope that you enjoyed yourself here in the Smoke Circle. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with episode 98, in which we will be looking at divination practices starting in the Elizabethan Age. Then we'll go on to the Victorians, and then into the New Age movement and today. We look forward to having you back in a couple weeks. In the meantime, get money, get high, give love, and my magic 8 ball says the answer is yes. So go get them, champ.